Thank you so very much for allowing me to be part of your meeting. The Wyoming Farm Bureau has been a very important part of our state for over 85 years. I'm proud to have such a strong ally fighting for the continued prosperity of agriculture in our state. Many issues being considered in Washington right now could have real impacts for the state of Wyoming. Agriculture is no longer only threatened by unpredictable weather, by prices, and by taxes, but now agriculture is also facing new battles. Today we must deal with the hundreds, if not thousands, of Washington laws, rules, and regulations that affect your work. Washington's newest threat to agriculture is an attempt to enact costly cap-and-trade and clean water restoration legislation. Cap-and-trade legislation, or as I like to call it, cap and tax, will be a challenge that could put many producers out of business. Cap and trade will increase costs for ag producers. 45% of agriculture inputs are energy intensive. That means 45% of the farmer or rancher's costs would be increased by cap and trade legislation. The cost created by cap and trade legislation would be passed down the supply chain. Farmers and ranchers would be forced to absorb their own increased costs, along with the costs of everyone else in the chain. Wyoming farmers and ranchers provide food and fiber for global consumers. But there's a lot of competition in the market. Farmers and ranchers in other agricultural exporting countries are not facing carbon regulation like we are. Cap and trade policy would place burdens on American producers that would decrease our competitiveness in world markets. Farmers and ranchers are our nation's best land managers. Cap and trade policy would limit producers' ability to employ conservation practices. What's worse, cap and trade policy could push farmers and ranchers out of the business by forcing them to sell their land for development. There are a lot of ideas floating around in Washington that could hurt Wyoming. Cap and trade legislation is just one of them. The so-called Clean Water Restoration Act is another example of Washington trying to exert even more control over our lives. This bill would redefine federal jurisdiction over water quality to include all waters of the United States. The Environmental Protection Agency only has jurisdiction over navigable waters of the United States. This bill would make one simple change. It would remove the word navigable. This bill would allow the Environmental Protection Agency to require a Clean Water Act a permit for just about any action on private or public land that might affect any kind of water. Well, you all know how destructive that would be. It just doesn't make sense. When the bill was considered by the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee in June, I offered practical amendments to exempt waters that the federal government has no business permitting. Every single amendment was defeated. Amendments to exempt stock ponds, prairie potholes, and wet meadows, all of them were voted down along party line votes. All those no votes made it clear that Washington has no understanding of life in rural America. We need policies that make it easier to manage businesses and the lands in Wyoming. I'm doing everything I can to bring common sense into the debate here in Washington. I'll continue to fight against cap and trade and against the Clean Water Restoration Act. I hope that you will continue to share your knowledge and your experience with me. Call, write, talk to my staff, talk to me. Any way we can help, we want to help. Thank you so very much for allowing me to join you today.